Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're really getting into something foundational, something maybe seen as a bit of a luxury sometimes, the art and science of reading.
Yeah, it often gets pushed aside, doesn't it? Like a chore from school or, something you only do on a holiday.
Exactly. But the sources we're looking at today, they come from this really deep analysis of like high-impact intellectual habits.
Yeah.
And they just completely challenge that idea.
They really do. They argue reading needs to be, well, fundamental, a high-stakes daily habit, crucial for your mental health, for growth.
And our listeners shared these sources that, interestingly, focus not just on what you should read, but the sort of psychological gears turning underneath, the how of reading effectively.
That's right. So our mission here, for you listening, is to pull out the 5 core principles from these materials. We're talking actionable steps, habit building,
Yeah, things you can actually use.
getting over those psychological hurdles like where's the time or why can't I remember anything, and importantly, how to curate what you read.
It feels like we're offering a shortcut almost to sustainable intellectual, well, survival maybe.
Yeah.
Moving past just liking books.
Definitely. It's about strategies to turn all that data you consume into actual usable knowledge.
Okay, let's dive in. Let's start with the absolute basics. Why? Why is reading every day not just nice, but, as the sources say, fundamentally necessary?
Well, the sources are incredibly strong on this point. They say it's not just about learning new words or, sounding smart at parties.
Right, it goes deeper.
Much deeper. Reading impacts pretty much every part of your life. The 2 big areas they highlight are, 1, your language skills, obviously,
Sure.
but crucially, 2, the actual formation of your mindset, your thought patterns. The very act of processing complex sentences shapes how you think, how you reason, how you react.
And there's this link they make to actual brain health, isn't there? Using words like vibrant and alive to describe the brain.
Exactly. They stress that the brain must get new information daily, constantly. If it doesn't, it sort of stagnates, and that stagnation is actively harmful.
Which brings us to this analogy they use, the millstone analogy.
Ah, yes, the millstone analogy. It's quite powerful.
It really stuck with me. It makes the cost of not reading so visceral. We're talking about those old, big, circular stones used for grinding wheat, right?
That's the one. Picture that setup. 2 heavy stones, one rotating on the other. They're designed to grind constantly.
Okay.
Now, if you keep feeding wheat between those stones, that's your new information, new ideas. The mill works perfectly. It grinds the wheat, produces flour. You get knowledge.
But what happens if you stop putting the wheat in?
Ah, that's the key. If you stop supplying the new material, the stones don't just sit there quietly. They keep grinding.
Against each other.
Against each other, they start consuming themselves. The sources are quite stark. If we don't consistently feed our brain new stuff, ideally from quality sources like books or articles,
Though they mention social media is a less ideal option.
right, less ideal, but still some input. But without that quality wheat, the brain effectively starts, well, eating itself.
Let's unpack that self-consumption a bit. It's not like a literal headache, is it? It's more like intellectual burnout.
It's more like cognitive and emotional wear and tear, I'd say. Think about it if you're just recycling the same old thoughts, the same limited arguments.
Stuck in a loop?
Exactly. Stuck in mental or emotional loops. You can't see problems from a fresh angle because you haven't taken anything new in. That inability to make new connections, to stay mentally alive, it leads to this deep fatigue. Decision fatigue, too.
Because you're just reprocessing the same old data.
Right. The brain's spending its energy grinding away at its own structure instead of processing new, valuable input.
So intellectual stagnation isn't passive at all.
Yeah.
It's an active kind of internal decay. And the quality fuel, the real wheat, comes from depth books, serious articles.
Absolutely. Quality in, quality out. Which naturally brings us straight to the biggest hurdle everyone mentions.
Time, or the lack of it.
The classic, I just don't have time to read.
Yeah. But the sources are pretty blunt about this, aren't they? They say it's not about waiting for that magical free hour to appear.
No, that free hour on the sofa is a myth for most people. It's about actively creating the situation for reading.
Shifting the responsibility.
Completely. You stop seeing reading as something to fill empty time and start treating it like, I don't know, a scheduled meeting with your own brain. You have to carve it out.
They mentioned finding unexpected situations.
Yeah, looking for those little gaps, the time waiting for the kettle to boil, waiting for a meeting, the commute if you're not driving.
Reading while walking got mentioned, though maybe carefully.
Yes, in safe environments only, please. But the principle is finding those moments between things. The key is having the book or article ready to go.
So even 5 or 10 minutes counts.
Absolutely. The sources insist if you prioritize even that tiny window daily, you will find it. It's not about needing 3 hours on a Saturday. It's microdosing information consistently.
So the antidote to the millstone grinding itself down is just that tiny, consistent commitment.
Yeah.
It reframes the problem from no time to what's my priority.
Precisely. And that leads us nicely from the why read to the how. How do you actually build a reading habit that sticks?
Right. Especially if you're starting from scratch, or maybe haven't read consistently in years.
The first piece of advice is absolutely crucial, especially for beginners, the ones maybe feeding their brain just crumbs right now. Start small, really small.
Like almost ridiculously small.
Almost feels like it, yes. The suggestions are like 5 minutes a day, or maybe just 2, 3, or 5 pages. That's it.
Why so minimal?
Because the goal initially isn't volume, it's building the habit loop. It's establishing what the sources call consistent continuity. Mitrani Alarak, as one source put it, doing it regularly.
So consistency trumps quantity, especially at the start.
Massively. Better to read 2 pages every single day without fail than to read 50 pages one day and then nothing for a week.
Okay, but that focus on just starting and being consistent runs right into this problem they identified, doesn't it? This monkey appetite trap.
Yes. The Maimun Ashtaluth. It's a brilliant term for a very common behavioral trap.
Explain that one. What is the monkey appetite?
It's about that initial rush of enthusiasm. When you start something new, you get excited, maybe a bit obsessed, and you just want to consume everything at once.
It's like, okay, my goal is 5 pages, but I pick up this amazing thriller, right? And I'm hooked. So I blow past 5 pages, read 20, 30, maybe 40 pages in one go. I feel great.
You feel amazing, like you've totally crushed it. But that feeling, that overindulgence, is the exact danger.
How? Seems counterintuitive.
Because according to the sources, that big burst of enthusiasm is often the breaking point. You've used up a ton of mental energy. You've accidentally told your brain, wow, reading is this huge draining effort.
Ah, I see. So the next day.
The next day, you feel that mental exhaustion, or maybe just the pressure to repeat that huge session. And the desire to skip reading just today becomes really strong, or you just abandon it altogether because the bar feels too high now.
Wow. So forcing yourself to stop, even when you're gripped by the story, is actually the key, even if it feels unnatural.
It feels totally unnatural, but the sources insist. If the goal is 5 pages or 5 minutes, you stop right there, period. Even if you desperately want to know what happens next.
What does that achieve psychologically?
It does 2 things. One, it reinforces the idea that the commitment is small, manageable, non-negotiable. 2, stopping when you're still engaged actually creates anticipation for the next session.
So instead of burnout, you're building desire, a little treat you look forward to.
Exactly. You're conditioning your brain for the long haul, building sustainable momentum that can survive a busy week, not just relying on those initial fragile bursts of excitement.
Okay, that makes sense. And this start small idea also applies to the books themselves.
Yes, definitely. Which leads to the next practical tip. Start with shorter books.
Not the 500-page epics.
Please no, not right at the beginning.
Yeah.
The advice is to aim for books around, say, 90 or 100 pages. Maybe 120 tops.
But why? What's the magic in short books?
It's pure psychological reinforcement. Finishing a book, any book, gives you this huge mental boost, a sense of accomplishment, motivation.
You get the win?
You get the win, you see it on your shelf, finished. And that feeling makes you much more likely to pick up the next book and finish that one too. It builds momentum.
And the opposite happens with that huge novel you start but don't finish.
Oh, absolutely. The sources warn about the psychological weight of abandoning a massive 600-page book halfway through.
It hangs over you.
It really does. It feels like a failure, and that feeling can genuinely sabotage your future attempts to read. Much better to collect several small, satisfying victories than risk one big, demoralizing defeat early on.
Okay, so we've got the habit going. We're reading our 5 pages a day, stopping on time, maybe finishing some shorter books. Now, what about what we're reading? How do we choose?
Right, the content itself. The initial advice here is exploration. Test your intellectual temperament, as the sources put it.
You mean?
Try a bit of everything. Dip into different genres, detective, sci-fi, history, psychology, romance, whatever. Read just a few pages at each. See what genuinely grabs you, what makes those 5 pages feel easy or exciting.
Find your natural inclination first.
Exactly. Find the genre that pulls you in, Makes the habit stickier.
Okay, sounds good. But say I find my thing, I love historical biographies. Is it okay then to just, live in that world, read nothing else?
And here's where the sources issue a really strong warning. Finding a favorite is great, essential even, but focusing exclusively on that one genre, that can be quite detrimental.
How so? Detrimental to what?
To your overall worldview, and maybe even your social skills. The idea is that every genre leaves a specific kind of stamp on your thinking, a particular lens it encourages you to use.
Okay.
And if you only ever get one kind of stamp, your perspective becomes unbalanced, skewed.
Can you give an example? What happens if I only read, say, detective novels? I get really good at solving fictional crimes.
You get very good at spotting inconsistencies, looking for clues, being analytical, maybe even judgmental. Your brain gets trained for high-level suspicion and deduction.
Which sounds useful.
It can be. But the downside, according to the sources, is you might start applying that suspicious lens everywhere to simple, everyday situations. You might start overanalyzing friends' comments, looking for hidden motives in casual conversations.
Seeing colleagues' actions as potential clues.
Exactly. You approach life like an unsolved case. And that constant suspicion, that need to doubt and dissect everything, can really damage relationships. People don't generally like being interrogated.
That's a fascinating point. You take a reading skill and misapply it to life. What about someone who only reads psychology books?
A different kind of imbalance emerges there. Someone constantly reading psychology might start seeing everything through a psychological or therapeutic lens.
Like diagnosing everyone.
Pretty much. Instead of just experiencing an emotion or navigating a normal disagreement, their first instinct is to analyze it, pathologize it, maybe even label it with jargon. Life becomes less about living and more about constant self-analysis or analysis of others.
So the brain just defaults to the pattern it knows best, the one it sees most often in reading.
That's the idea. If you only feed it hammers, everything looks like a nail.
So the recommendation is balance.
Balance is key. Even if you adore historical biographies, make a point to deliberately read something different sometimes. A novel, some poetry, a book on sociology. Mix it up. Get different imprints to keep your thinking flexible and well-rounded.
Okay, but there's an exception, right? A time when focusing intensely on one subject is recommended.
Yes, there is. Strategic, focused reading. This is when intense specialization is not just okay, but necessary.
When would that be?
Primarily when you're doing deep research for a specific purpose, preparing a presentation, writing a paper, getting ready for a seminar or webinar, maybe a big project at work where you need to become the expert.
And how does the approach change then? Do I just find the single best book on, say, quantum physics?
No, interestingly, the strategy is different. You immerse yourself in that one subject, quantum physics, but you read multiple books by different authors on it.
Why different authors?
To expose your mind to various perspectives, arguments, and nuances within that single topic. Author A might explain a concept one way, author B might offer a critique or a different angle, author C might provide historical context.
So it prevents you from just absorbing one person's viewpoint wholesale.
Exactly. It forces you to compare, contrast, and synthesize. If you encounter conflicting arguments, you have to wrestle with them and form your own conclusion, perhaps a unique blend of ideas. That's how you develop comprehensive, truly original thought on a subject, rather than just parroting one source.
That idea of synthesizing versus just absorbing brings us neatly to this classic debate. You hear it all the time. Who's better off or wiser? The person who's read hundreds of books or the person who's traveled the entire world?
Right. The well-read versus the well-traveled. It's a common question. And the sources here offer a really interesting take.
Which is?
Neither one is automatically superior. The deciding factor isn't the reading or the traveling itself, it's awareness. Freck Quinn Olmack, as one source put it, being conscious of, reflecting on, and understanding what you've actually read or seen.
So it's not about the sheer volume of input, whether it's pages or passport stamps.
No, it's about the quality of the processing that happens afterwards, or even during.
The sources seemed quite critical of a modern trend here, didn't they? Especially maybe among younger people trying to build an image.
Yes, they talked about what we could call performative consumption, reading books, or maybe even just listing books you intend to read, primarily to project an intellectual image.
Showing off the reading list to give off that smart vibe.
Yeah. Exactly. Posting pictures of book stacks. It's about appearing well-read. But the sources argue it's basically meaningless if that reading doesn't actually, nourish your soul or lead to any real insight or change in how you see or act in the world.
So you can read 50 classics, but if you haven't actually engaged with them.
Then you're just a well-stocked library with no librarian. You haven't gained true understanding.
How do we move from that performative reading, or just passive reading, to genuine intellectual digestion then? What's the key?
The key step, the missing link often, is what the sources emphasize as active reflection. Tricur et omic, thinking deeply. You have to actually set aside time or make a conscious effort to process what you've consumed.
They used the travel example again here, didn't they?
Yes, it illustrates it well. Imagine someone visiting, say, a significant historical site. They walk around, maybe take a bunch of photos.
40 selfies, yeah.
Right. But if they don't stop and actually think about what happened there, if they don't try to connect the history of that place to something they read in a book, maybe about human nature or conflict or politics.
Then the trip was just sightseeing, data collection.
Intellectually speaking, yes. It lacks depth. They haven't extracted a conclusion, Transikschatzermak. They haven't drawn a personal meaning or connection from the experience.
So whether it's reading a book or visiting a place, the value comes from actively trying to understand it, connect it, and figure out what it means to you.
Precisely. Intellectual growth, real maturation, only happens when you consciously step onto that path of reflecting on the information and experiences you gather. Otherwise, you can read 1,000 books and travel 1,000,000 miles and still remain intellectually shallow.
Okay, this is all great. We need to read, we need a habit, we need balance, we need reflection. But now we hit the big one. The doubt that probably stops more people reading than anything else.
Memory.
Ah, yes. The fear. Everyone feels this. Why can't I remember what I read? Or even, I finish a page, turn it over, and I've already forgotten what was on the previous one. People think, am I just wasting my time? Is anything actually going in?
It's such a common concern, and here the sources offer some really significant reassurance. They state very clearly that this kind of forgetting is natural and completely normal.
Really? It's okay to not remember the details.
It's more than okay, it's expected. The idea that you should be able to recall every plot point, every character's name, every specific argument or date, that's often an unrealistic expectation that trips people up.
So if it's not all sitting there in my conscious, ready-to-recall memory, where does the information actually go? Is it just lost?
Not at all. This is where the sources talk about the power of the subconscious reservoir, Schur-Alta, the subconscious mind.
Okay.
The idea is that everything you read, whether you consciously highlight it or make notes or not, is being registered. It's being written to your subconscious.
So even if I feel like I forgot that novel I read last month.
Your deeper mind, the part that handles ingrained skills, patterns, intuition, language, your implicit memory has processed and stored aspects of it. Reading isn't just about conscious fact recall. It's about deep assimilation.
What are the actual tangible benefits then? If I can't consciously pull up the facts, how does this subconscious storage help me?
The main benefit is that the subconscious serves up the relevant pattern or insight when you need it. Not when you're trying to force recall for a quiz, but when a real-life situation arises.
Like an instinct.
Exactly. A situation comes up, a conversation, a decision, a problem, and the right idea or perspective, or even just the right way to phrase something, surfaces. You might not even know why you thought of it, but it came from that subconscious reservoir built by your reading.
Is there any way to actually see this happening? Proof?
The most immediate and common proof is often in your own self-expression, your fluency. Even if you feel you remember zero specifics from the last few books, the constant exposure to well-structured language, complex ideas, and varied vocabulary shapes how you speak and write. You find yourself articulating things more clearly, more persuasively, maybe using words you didn't even know you knew, especially compared to people who don't read much.
So reading builds the underlying machinery of thought and expression, even if I can't name the specific cogs.
That's a great way to put it. It upgrades your cognitive operating system. And the sources shared a really compelling little story about this.
Oh, yeah.
Someone described having a reaction to a situation in their life, maybe a work conflict or social dynamic. They reacted instinctively, confidently.
Okay.
And only later, reflecting on it, did they realize their specific reaction, the exact way they handled it, was identical to how a character handled a very similar situation in a book they'd read months ago. A book whose plot details they thought they'd completely forgotten.
Wow. That's incredible. So reading literally gets into our instincts, our behavioral responses.
It shapes your reflexes, your go-to moves in life. You are fundamentally changed by what you read, even if you can't cite the source.
But is there a way to make this process more conscious, to tap into that reservoir more deliberately?
Yes. To really unlock the full benefits, the sources say you need to cultivate a state of active awakening. Ayakolmak being awake, aware.
Active awakening, what does that involve?
It involves deliberately asking yourself questions that bridge your reading and your life, making it a practice. During a significant event or decision, consciously pause and ask, okay, what's the connection here? How does this situation relate to anything I've read? What patterns am I seeing?
So you're actively prompting the subconscious to make the links visible, playing detective with your own knowledge.
Precisely. It's a form of self-checkup. It helps you realize how much you've integrated and allows you to consciously leverage that knowledge. Without that active questioning, you might have all this potential stored away but never fully benefit from it. You need to judge, connect, and awaken to it.
Okay, we've covered a lot. The why, the how, the balance, the memory. Now we get to what feels like the final and maybe most critical piece of the puzzle. It uses that analogy of physical health again.
Yes, this is about being highly selective, curating your intellectual diet.
Why is this so crucial?
Because reading isn't passive intake, it's active consumption, and it shapes you profoundly. Just like people are careful about the food they eat, avoiding junk, reading labels, the sources argue you must apply the same level of scrutiny to what you read.
Because every book has an agenda, essentially, or at least a viewpoint.
Exactly. Every author, consciously or not, is trying to impress their thoughts, their beliefs, their way of seeing the world onto you, the reader. You are consuming their worldview.
Which means you have to be incredibly careful about what you let in, especially at certain stages. This brings us to the foundation rule.
Yes, a really important warning, especially for newer readers, or maybe people who feel they haven't yet built a really solid personal framework of beliefs and critical thinking skills.
What should they avoid initially?
The advice is to steer clear, at first, of really heavy, often highly conflicting works. Things like deep philosophy, intense political ideologies, complex religious texts, or very dense psychological theories that demand you take a strong stance.
Why? What's the danger?
The risk is intellectual destabilization. If you don't have your own strong foundation, your own core values, and way of critically assessing ideas, these powerful, persuasive texts can overwhelm you.
You might just adopt the author's view wholesale.
Yes, you might too easily accept the author's entire system as your own absolute truth, without having the tools to question it properly. The sources say it's like putting too much load, too much weight on a foundation that isn't fully set yet.
Build your own house first, basically. Develop your own critical thinking using more balanced material.
Exactly. Start with things that help you observe and understand different facets of the world, rather than things demanding immediate, total commitment to one specific, often complex ideology.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense for beginners. But what about once you have that solid foundation? Once you feel secure in your own critical abilities, does that mean you should only read things you already agree with, create an echo chamber?
Absolutely not. In fact, the opposite. Once you have that strong, conscious foundation, you're actually equipped to engage constructively with challenging, even negative texts.
Negative meaning.
Mm-hmm.
Books filled with ideas you find repellent. Or maybe just very pessimistic worldviews.
Exactly. Books that argue against your core beliefs, or present a bleak outlook, or describe negative events or philosophies. A mature reader, one with a solid foundation, can approach these texts differently.
How? They don't just absorb the negativity.
No. They observe it, analyze it. They engage in that checkup process. They actively look for what they can learn, even from a viewpoint they disagree with. Maybe they can extract a useful insight about that negative viewpoint, understand its flaws better, or even find an unexpected positive element hidden within it.
So the strong foundation allows you to dissect the opposing view without being consumed or converted by it.
Precisely. The book becomes material for critical analysis, not just a thing to be passively absorbed. You're strong enough to wrestle with it without losing your own footing.
Which leads us right back to that core idea. We literally become what we consume intellectually.
We really do. That subconscious assimilation is always happening. Over time, you take on the shape of the ideas you consistently allow into your mind, which makes the choice of what to read, what to prioritize, what to deeply engage with maybe the most important act of self-definition there is. Hashtag tag outro.
Wow, this has been incredibly insightful, a really practical guide to not just reading, but reading for genuine impact. Let's just quickly bullet point those key takeaways for everyone listening.
Okay, first, that millstone analogy. Remember, your brain needs that daily input to stay vibrant. Don't let it grind itself down. Start feeding it today, even just a little.
Second, watch out for that monkey appetite. Enthusiasm is great, but consistency is king. Stop at your small goal, even if you want more. Condition yourself for the long game.
Third, it's awareness and active reflection that matter, not just the number of books on your shelf. Think about what you read, connect it, extract your own conclusions.
And finally, curate your intellectual diet carefully. Build your own foundation first before tackling the really heavy, conflicting stuff. And know why you're reading what you're reading.
So, the immediate action for you listening: apply that start small rule tonight, pick your 5 minutes or your 3 pages, and stop when you hit it. That tiny discipline, repeated, is the path.
Fantastic. And now, as always, we leave you with a final thought to chew on, something that builds on all this.
Right. If we accept that every book tries to instill its author's worldview, then maybe the ultimate measure of truly effective reading isn't just about remembering facts or even understanding the author's point.
What is it then?
Perhaps it's whether you successfully manage to navigate that influence, extract what's valuable to you, and synthesize your own unique conclusions, all without sacrificing the core of your own carefully considered foundational beliefs.
So the real challenge isn't just learning.
It's integrating that learning without simply being indoctrinated by it, finding your truth within theirs.
A powerful challenge indeed. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. We hope you feel empowered to truly master the art of reading, starting today.